Okay, I think we're ready to get going, Chris. You want to record it? Thank you. Okay. It's 7 o'clock, and I want to call a meeting of the Finance Committee to order. I'm going to do that by means of roll call. We do have a quorum, so let's have a roll call. I'm Dean Banfield, and I'm here. Chris?
Here.
Ms. Reynolds. Ms. Hartman?
Present.
Ms. Ortner?
Present.
Mr. Tarpey?
Here.
Mr. Packard?
Here.
Mr. Hickling?
Present.
Ms. Zoll?
Here.
Mr. Rubenstein?
Present.
Mr. Guariello?
Present.
Mr. Jameson?
Here.
Okay, the meeting is in order. We are underway. I have a few announcements before we dive into the agenda. The main one that I'd like to bring to everyone's attention is that coming up on September 30th, there is a seminar being held under Zoom by the Massachusetts Association of School Committees. School committee members are required to take a 6-part set of courseware, which sort of certifies them to be valid school committee members and have them trained in the various aspects of how to manage a school system and how to be and all the responsibilities of being a school committee member. But one unit of that is school finance, and that is being conducted on September 30th at 5:30 p.m. via Zoom. I asked the superintendent whether or not, as a participating town, the finance committee could kind of piggyback on their membership in the Massachusetts Association of School Committees. She inquired of MASC, and they got back to her and said they would be delighted. So I will send out after the meeting the details on how to sign up for the night, September 30th, 5:30 p.m. I think it's an hour and a half. I think it goes from 5:30 to 7, hour and a half session on school finance. And I think that would be very instructive, and I think it would be very helpful because there are a lot of very detailed items. I think that they are also intent on holding a Chapter 70 seminar, which is completely only about that sort of state aid component. And there will be a separate seminar. It's not announced yet, but I was told that that is that the MASC is considering putting one on that just deals with Chapter 70, which we always have questions about how it all works and, all of that. So I bring that to your attention.
Sounds great. Will there be a quiz?
Well, there may be at the end of it. I don't know how they handle that because it's a continuing ed unit. And if you're just sort of like clicked in and you're attending, your picture's not visible, and you snooze through the whole thing, maybe there's ways they can call on you or you have to answer questions at the end. I don't know. Good. There you go. So that's highly recommended. The superintendent did volunteer that she and Jared could offer something like that if MASC wasn't going to let us in, that they would do it themselves. But it looks like we're going to be able to get the official courseware. So I think that would be really helpful for us to attend. Anybody who wants to, I will get the information out. The other item I just want to say is thank you to all of you. It's been a bit of a run here as the chair. And we really had to do some heavy lifting to get ourselves through all of this. And I really appreciate people taking time out of their summers. We typically have a very light calendar during the summer. There's not a lot that the Finance Committee is up to over the course of the summer, and this has been a very exceptional year in that regard. Special thanks to Mary and Chris, who helped in the final hours pulling together the Finance Committee report. I want to thank all those who sent in their observer reports in a timely manner. That came together pretty nicely. I'm pretty happy with the Finance Committee report. So thanks to all of you who ended up doing that. So, and after that, I think we can dive into our agenda. Okay, is any?
Before we do that?
Yeah, sure.
Can we just have a yay? Dean, yay, keeping us all on track here.
They've taken away our Zoom reactions, Dean, so we can't give you like a little applause, but
Is there a thumbs up thing or something? I don't know.
thumbs up, yeah.
There's also probably a thumbs down. I don't know how to access those different features.
Good job, Dean. Thank you.
All right. Well, okay. Enough said. Let's dive into the agenda. So the first item on our agenda. So really, what we're doing is we're sort of tying off some of the loose ends that have cropped up since our last meeting. I really wasn't intent on holding another meeting between our last one and because the last time we met, we had closed off all of our recommendations, and we were just kind of pushing forward to getting the final things tied off on the Finance Committee report, and then it was time for town meeting. But a few things have come up, and it behooves us to take care of those ahead of, sitting out on the Doug White fields. It'll be very complicated for us to caucus, to deliberate, and to, have last-minute votes on the field. So we're going to do the best we can to get through anything that has come up that we can get ahead of. And the first item on our agenda is something that I personally raised, but that turned into a slightly different, slightly different activity. And I'll give you a quick history. I had talked to the moderator about and forwarded some language for an amendment to Article 30, which was the bus, the $200,000 from free cash for the buses and for the infrastructure improvements at the bus depot. And my attempt was to try to modify that so that we were taking and using a debt to, within the levy limit, debt to do the infrastructure component. There's a rarely used piece of the town meeting rules, which allows for any article that has financial components to it, that has already been decided, to be reconsidered. All articles are considered to remain open. It's rarely used in Concord, but by the time we got to Article 30, I was suggesting that we reconsider the Article 11 debt and please put $150,000 back on the thing we already decided. That didn't sound like a great plan. In consultation with the moderator, town council, et cetera, I kind of changed course and said, okay, when Article 11 comes up, I'll just ask for an amendment to Article 11 that asks for an increase in the levy limit debt. And by the time you get to 30, you won't need to do anything. All of those things, based on the rule of the meeting, would require action on the part of the Finance Committee, or I just couldn't even move them. I brought this idea to the Select Board, acting on my own behalf as a citizen. I brought that to the Select Board. They responded very favorably to it. And as the conversation with the Select Board evolved during that meeting, the idea came to pass that wouldn't it just be easier for the Select Board to simply move Article 11 with the additional $150,000 added to the article, and there would be no need for any amending. They took a straw poll, and it was unanimous that would be something that they would be interested in doing. But the reason that they couldn't just vote to do it is because we, as the Finance Committee, need to reauthorize. We've already approved a certain level of debt that was part of the previous motion that was anticipated. And they can't just go ahead and say, yeah, we want more. The Finance Committee actually does have a role here in town meeting, and we need to be behind and authorize any motion that includes trying to raise debt. So that's why we're here. We're here to try and reconsider our motion to move affirmative action at a certain dollar number, and the dollar number we moved for was $2,825,000 of new debt within the levy limit. I'm sorry, 2 million. Yeah, the new number is the old number was $675,000 of debt within the levy limit, which we've already authorized. And what we're trying to do here, or what we anticipate would be consistent with what the select board has agreed to do, is to authorize the new number at $2,825,000 of new levy limit debt this year. We've distributed the revision. Yes, I see Brian has his hand up.
Just correct me if I'm wrong. So it was 2,675. If we're going to try to absorb the busing at 200,000, wouldn't it be 2,875 and not?
Well, we're only absorbing 150,000 of the busing, which is to reconstruct the bus depot. 50,000 will help them purchase buses, and that's usually done through operating budgets. And so, using free cash to purchase the buses is still consistent with the strategy of the schools to generally just include that in operating budgets. So we're just taking 150 out, Brian, not all 200, and moving that. Okay. So, can I get a motion, I guess, to approve the new language that was distributed along with the changed single line in the capital improvement and debt plan that's attached to the motion?
Do you want to have a motion first before we have discussion?
I think you usually have a motion and then you have discussion under the motion. I think we need to do this in a two-step process, Dee. Actually, I have to make sure I'm doing this according to Hoyle. And this two-step process would be, I want a motion to reconsider our previous vote. So we can start there, and then we can have a second motion, I believe, to move affirmative action of the new thing. But we aren't going to talk about it unless we have a motion to reconsider our previous vote. So I need
Thank you for that clarification.
Yeah. Mary.
When you say reconsider our previous vote on Article 30?
No, our previous vote on Article 11.
Okay, so moved.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, so I will take, is there any discussion of having a reconsideration of our motion under Article 11? Is there any discussion of that? Okay, I'm going to call the roll.
Yeah, I have discussion on that.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah, I understand what the issue is. I understand what you are driving at in terms of the infrastructure for the $150,000 for the electronic or the electrification infrastructure at the bus depot. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. So I do want to raise a couple of points. You know, this kind of flip-flops back with Article 30 as well.
Yep.
And I do get to the point of why I bring you back then to Article 11. But I did some additional research to find out what the status is on actually the funding, round 2 funding that's associated with Article 30. And that is still hasn't changed since December. I have sent emails to get confirmation in terms of when round 2 funding would begin, et cetera, and nothing has come about. And then another thing I wanted to bring up at the select board meeting, I know when they were discussing, you know, the pros and cons and all, and then took a vote. I know after that, the town manager made a statement that I took it to heart. He was saying that as we all know, he didn't say this part, but as we all know, they dropped their capital debt budget by $1.5+ million from what it was in the original warrant.
Right.
And that means they had to postpone projects, they had to, or just not even consider them. And I think at this point in time, for us to introduce $150,000 of debt I'm just very reluctant to do that. I think that it's not fair to the town. Why couldn't the town have, offered something for $150,000 as well? So I just feel that the timing is bad on it. I just wanted to make those statements. I think I might have a couple of others, but I'll look at my notes and you can go on if other people have something to say.
I think I saw Chris had her hand up.
Yeah. So similar to Dee's comments, I didn't, when we had the vote on whether we should do, I guess it's Article 30, which is the bus request, I was a no. And this I view as a follow-on to that. And I would be a no on this as well for the same reasons why I wasn't a fan of Article 30. So I'm not a fan of reopening it.
Okay. Mary?
I voted no on Article 30 as well, but my reason was because I didn't like the use of free cash as the funding mechanism. It wasn't that I was against the buses necessarily. I think the timing, well, never mind. I just didn't like the use of free cash because I thought at our last meeting, I thought, Chris, you made a really good point as far as we're going to need that free cash. This, what we're considering here will protect free cash and it will fund something out of debt that will only be issued when we need it. So it's not like we're going to draw it right away. And I get the feeling that the town is behind this. So that's my feeling is that the town is behind this bus and the infrastructure to make the buses run. And if we don't do this, then it will pass and it will come out of free cash. So I'm taking a more practical attitude, which is I think this is a good idea to take the infrastructure out of debt as opposed to letting the article stand as it is and have to take it out of free cash.
Dee.
I guess I want to go back to, if we do issue debt, it's the town that's responsible. It's not the schools. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, but we're also talking about school buses.
We're also talking about the depot, which is owned by the town of Concord.
Okay.
So we're basically doing an improvement in a town asset.
Okay. And we also right now have an electrification committee by the town that is looking at a plan for the town.
So I don't mean
are we putting the cart before the horse with regards?
I don't mean to cut you off, Dee, but what I think we're doing is we're debating the issue. The question I think that's before us is, do we want to open this for reconsideration? And I think we can get through that vote quickly.
Okay.
And if we decide not to reconsider it, that's fine. But I think we can get through that. And then these are actual valid points about whether or not we even want to do it or we want to change our minds. But we can't change our minds or do anything unless we vote to open the reconsideration.
Thank you.
Can we move?
I thought I moved it.
Forward with the vote on that.
I did move. We need a vote now, Dean.
We need a vote, I think. As long as everybody's okay with that, I think we can take a vote because I think we can still have this conversation, but I don't think it's under this under this vote. Okay, Dean, I vote yes. Ms. Reynolds?
I'll vote yes.
Ms. Hartman?
Yes.
Ms. Ortner?
Yes.
Mr. Tarpey?
Yes.
Mr. Packard?
Yes.
Mr. Hickley?
Yes.
Ms. Zoll?
Yes.
Mr. Rubenstein?
Yes.
Ms. Quariello?
Yes.
Mr. Patel?
Yes.
Mr. Taylor?
Yes.
Mr. Jameson?
Yes.
Okay, we're on. That's a unanimous vote, I declare. So we are now able to reconsider our motion under Article 11 for affirmative action. And so we should either have a motion and then we can have discussion. I think we should have the motion that we are discussing. How about that?
Okay, let me try. Can I try the motion? I'll try crafting the motion so that we can start the discussion. The motion is to change the language in Article 11, borrowed funds up to $2,825,000.
And I think you can also add to your motion that, that we are Or you could just say, as we have in the handout, or whatever, because there's some extra language at the bottom about, adding a line item to the public works in the capital plan, but that, whatever, however you want it.
Okay, good.
Okay. Okay, so do we have I guess that's the best I can do to get a motion on the table. Is there a second for that?
Second.
Second.
So, okay, now, Dee, you can carry on. I think
I'll let others talk first. I'm
Okay.
perfectly fine with that.
Okay. Are there any others who would like to weigh in? Well, Mary.
I just want to say something that I do see Dee's point that I think we need a larger plan in town to actually think about what are the costs, what are the investments that the town wants to make in order to save energy and electrify our fleet, electrify our buildings. We need a plan, and we need somebody to start embedding that in their capital plan, whether it's the school or the town. So to me, this is one way to get a piece of that embedded in the town's capital plan. So we're starting to say that these types of infrastructure changes should be in the appropriate capital plans that are put forward, either by the town or the schools. I see your point, Dee. But in other words, I'm in favor of this for what I said before, which is practically, I think if we don't do this, it will come out of free cash. And also the other advantage I see is that it kind of puts this as a placeholder in the capital, in the municipal plan for the town to say, hey, this is the first of things you're going to see coming forward.
We're starting to invest in carbon reduction. We're making investments in carbon reduction.
Dean, could I make a quick comment?
Yes, Carrie.
I just wanted to mention that the town in its capital plan has funds set aside for resource sustainability. I believe this is the third year. There's $105,000 in the plan. So I just wanted to note that we do include a small amount already.
Thank you for that. Can you give us some detail on what you would expect to be doing with that money in this fiscal year, Karen?
So my recollection is, well, actually, so we have converted or plan to convert some of our vehicles to electric. I know one of the items that was included, but we pulled it out at the last minute, was working with, I believe, the University of New Hampshire to develop some guidelines for historic homes for converting to green energy. So that's a project. It's not funded, but it likely will be funded in the fiscal 22 budget. So right now, it mostly has to deal with electrification of existing town fleet.
Thank you. Okay.
Are these in the municipal capital plan or the operating?
They're in the cash capital.
It's cash
Correct.
Capital. Cash capital.
Yes.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, so
I have a question.
Yeah.
My question is, if the infrastructure is put in place, who generally installs electric power in the town? And who pays for it?
I don't know the answer to that, quite honestly. My sense of that is that this would be a collaborative effort. This would need to be a contracted out effort. The municipal light plant may want portions or all of the contract to do the work. It involves trenching a long trench that would service 15 bays, laying conduit, just like you would if your house was being undergrounded, to bring the electricity and the cable and the telephone line to your house through underground conduits. So it would be that kind of project, and it would include laying into that very high capacity electric service lines, as well as a hookup to CMLP. So some pieces of that, I'm sure CMLP will undertake, but other pieces like trenching and laying conduit and that kind of thing, any municipal contractor might be willing to do, or Public Works could do it themselves.
Or Public Works could do it.
Well, for example, I don't know the answer to this question. When you reconstruct a road, municipal light plant says it's not undergrounded now. We want undergrounding. Who digs the trench? who's responsible for laying the conduit? I don't know the answer to those questions either, but it's probably it'll probably be of a similar sort of shared responsibility in that regard.
But then in the long run, who then is going to pay for the infrastructure? Not the infrastructure itself, but the cost of the power that is going to be used, the electricity.
I believe that will be paid for by the schools in the same way that they buy diesel fuel, that they have a truck come in and fill up their diesel tanks, and then they fuel their buses. I'm sure that's part of the contract that the schools.
So they'll have to have that in their budget at some point in time, correct?
Yes, but we heard an extensive display by Brian Folds. The fueling costs to the school system will be less than to fuel a diesel bus. So I think there would be savings to. So the weird thing about this is the town is undertaking the upgrade. The town is undertaking the debt payments, but the people who benefit might be the school budgets because they'll have cheaper fueling costs, okay, and may also be ratepayers because they may have less expensive electric rates. So, how these things map is part of what Mary was talking about, and that is, we need a kind of a full bore way to sort of understand how these various benefits end up being allocated and also paid for. So
then we would really ultimately like the buy-in of all the participants, correct?
It would be a good thing.
It would be a good thing.
Now, just to put a fine point on that, Article 31 is all about that. It is not.
Article 31 is not being moved.
Article 31 is not being moved because the town.
Because they're working on that now.
The town is taking the initiative to develop a strategy for electrification of the municipal fleet.
Right.
So work is being done. Article 31 kind of pushed the town to take action before town meeting even could get to it.
Correct.
This motion gets the town. This revision of Article 11 motion gets the town to now get into the business of getting us ready to have a fleet of electric buses. So there you go.
There you go.
And quite frankly, I'm really quite in agreement with Mary on the question of this being either we're going to take it out of free cash or not. We as a finance committee have already voted our assent. So we've already acted to say this is a good project and we want affirmative action. This, in my personal view, is a more appropriate funding mechanism for the project than what we had already agreed to, which was taking free cash, which is something we want to conserve, I think, in these times. So those are my 2 cents. So,
Hey, Dean,
yes.
can I just want to be clear. Except for how we're funding it, nothing else has changed. Nothing substantively related to the project has changed since we last voted to support it, correct?
No, nothing's changed. This is literally just changing the funding mechanism.
Yeah.
From free cash to debt. So that's really all this is doing.
So Dean, is the next step for us to make a change to Article 30? Because I think part of that motion last time was to really explicitly take it from free cash. So do we need to amend that motion?
It's not our motion. It's a citizen petition. I will say that I've been in direct contact throughout this process with Brian Folds. He's fully on board. In fact, he did not even attend the select board meeting at which this was discussed. And I asked him about that. I said, Brian, why did you not even, did you not even listen in? And he specifically said, I don't want to be involved with how it's funded. I don't care. I just want the money. He literally wanted to let Kerry or Stephen Crane just make the decision on how to fund it. He did not want, he just wants to make sure that the funding is in place. So he didn't even attend the conversation. But he's fully on board with getting it fully funded, which this continues to do. If we were to say, let's try to move it to, next year, like let's just fund the 50 grand to buy the buses and we'll talk about that later, he would really weigh in. But he's happy that the money is still fully appropriated.
I make a motion to increase the debt limit per Mary's original motion. Do we need that? Or do we make a motion to vote?
Her motion, I believe, was it for affirmative action, Mary, to increase the levy limit debt number to $2,825,000 under Article 11, and to add a line for the bus EV infrastructure of $150,000 to the capital, cash capital and debt plan.
So can we just call a vote now?
So yes, so that's the question. Are there any more, or do we have any more discussion? Because that's the motion that we're currently operating under. I don't see any more discussion, so we can have a vote. Mr. Banfield, I vote yes. Ms. Reynolds?
Yes.
Ms. Hartman?
Yes.
Ms. Ortner?
No.
Mr. Swain? I'm sorry, he's not here. Mr. Tarpey?
Yes, he is.
Right there.
Oh, wait, you're there. Okay, sorry.
Wearing the suit.
I'm sorry, I joined late.
That's okay. We'll get to you in a second because I'm going around in order, but Lane Partridge looked like you, so I. Mr. Tarpey.
Yes.
Mr. Packard.
Yay.
Mr. Hickling.
Yes.
Ms. Zoll.
Yes.
Mr. Rubenstein.
Yes.
Mr. Guariello.
Yes.
Mr. Patel.
Yes.
Mr. Taylor.
Yes.
Mr. Jameson.
Yes.
Mr. Swain.
Yes.
It's unanimous, and I so declare. So we are.
It's not
No,
unanimous.
no.
I'm sorry.
There's
No.
one no.
Who's the
He
no?
voted no.
There was,
E.
D. D still no. I'm sorry.
Did John
We have
vote?
one no.
Did John vote? I don't. Dean,
Yes.
did
Yes,
John?
I did vote.
John voted. Mr.
Okay,
Hickling, he
sorry.
moved around on the screen somehow magically. Maybe
That's
because
fine, okay. Sorry.
Sorry, I'll try to sit
He got
still.
voted. Yep, he voted. He was playing hopscotch with us there. So I believe that what will happen next is that having our motion for affirmative action of the new higher levy limit debt number, the select board will meet just prior to town meeting. They will take a formal vote, and then when it comes to the floor, they will move this higher number under Article 11. And under Article 30, Mr. Folds knows that this will be funded, and he will simply move 50,000 for buses. He will not have to talk about infrastructure. He just moves 50,000 for buses if this is approved. So that's how that's going to shake out. I don't believe we need to do anything further on 30 because we approved it at a higher number, free cash. So if he moves a lower number, I don't think we need to take further action. Is that okay? Okay. So I think we can move on to number 2 on our agenda. The other thing that has changed since the last time we got together is that there has been a revision to the tax increment financing agreement that is proposed between the select board and the Grantham Group. So that has been distributed to us, and I think there are a few items that we can sort of summarize. I want to be kind of clear here. We are conducting a finance committee meeting, and this is our business meeting, and we can have citizens weigh in. We can take comment, but we have had 2 hearings on this. We have had the Grantham Group come in for a separate meeting with us that was not a public hearing, but it was a separate meeting. And I think we can kind of move forward ourselves, discuss the changes that have occurred. We've had some input. The Concord Housing Foundation sent us correspondence today. I think that was distributed, and you should all have that. And I'm not sure that we are, that we should, necessarily at this late stage be, looking for too much more further citizen input. I just want us to have a conversation here. Right now, we're going to have the same question before us. Do we want to reconsider what it is we've already voted? And if we do want to reconsider what we've already voted, then we can move on to maybe some motion under that reconsideration. But right now, it's open as to whether or not the changes that have been brought to us are worthy of being reconsidered. I'm going to try to summarize them. I'm going to just flip through my copy. So the first point in the document that's really substantive, that's been changed, is that the exemption percentage has been dropped. It is now 69.21%. And the cap on the total amount of the exemption is now lowered to $2 million. It was 2.6 something before. It is now $2 million. A paragraph 5 has been added under Section A, the town's obligations. And it's interesting that it says that the town has obligations, and the paragraph 5 really says that the company agrees to do things. So it seems like it's kind of in the wrong place. It seems like that's a company obligation, but it's under the town's obligations. So the company agrees that acting in various capacities, that it will not seek any type of direct or indirect financial support from the town, and that the exemption will not be increased. So that is the other piece of this puzzle. That is, there was some back and forth about whether those kinds of assertions would end up in a separate document, and it was decided in consultation with town council that those sorts of assertions would end up directly in the TIF, that the company would not ask for further financial support, direct or indirect financial support. Other than that, I think that pretty much covers it. Yes,
Okay.
Mary.
I have a question. Before we have a motion whether we should consider it or reconsider it or not, I'd like to understand if these changes are material or not. And the first one was that we changed the amount of the exemption. But I believe that the percentage of the exemption, but I believe that doesn't change the amount that they're going to be actually paying in property tax in a given year. If I understand it correctly, and I'm glad you're here, Lane, it still stays at $75,000. That I don't think that's changed at all. So can somebody clarify that for me so that I can understand if this is a material change to the agreement or not?
I get you're asking me.
Is that okay?
Originally, the total amount of the exemption was not tied to the annual payment. It was set up as a ceiling, and they weren't tied together. So now the total exemption amount has been dropped low enough that it does tie directly to the annual percentage reduction. So that's why you've seen it go from 78% to the 69.21. As that total exemption changes, you're assuming a 15-year exemption, it drops the percentage. So it did make a difference going from 78% of what they would pay in taxes to 69.21% of what they would pay for taxes.
So let me be clear. They are going to be paying more property tax with this revised TIF than they were with the TIF that we voted on last time.
Yes.
I thought the $75,000 hadn't changed. Or am I wrong?
No, because the $75,000 is what Grantham talks about.
Right.
What
Right.
governs the amount that I reduce the taxes by is the 69.21. So whatever value of the improvement I determine it to be, they get a 69.21% reduction from that. And if that's higher than 75, 65, taxes would be the 65, then it's higher.
So, Lane, if the project cost has gone from 16 million up to 19 million, let's just assume that you value it at the cost, 19 million. How does that impact what they're going to end up paying? Because
yeah, be careful about costs. So whenever you get into subsidized anything, the reason it's subsidized is because what it costs to build is greater than what it's worth.
Okay.
And so you have to look at what it will be worth when it's completed, not what it costs to build it. It's the same with solar energy. It costs more to build it than it's worth. And that's why the government gives all the subsidies on solar. It's the same thing here. So when I value it, depending on what the HUD median income is at the time it's completed, that determines the value more than anything. Minus its expenses, I get to a net operating income and I cap that into a value. Right now, based on the numbers that I have, I've valued it at 13 million. Hang on, I got a spreadsheet up here. 13,982,000. That's what it's going to be worth when it's done. So don't mix the two.
Okay, and so that ends up, by your calculations, generating how much in annual taxes?
Well, we also have $1 million of personal property, so it would be 192,649. We were using about 178 or 187 at one point. I forget exactly what it was, but we weren't considering the personal property tax as well. And as the total exemption amount kept getting reduced, we put the personal property obligation in there as well, so that we would get a truer picture of where we're going to be.
So right now, we're with the exemption, you're looking at a tax revenue to the town of 192?
No, that's what it would be without the exemption.
Oh, without the exemption, okay. And with the exemption?
So, hang on one sec. Haven't figured that one.
Huh.
Looks like it's close to 90,000.
Yeah, it's about 90,000.
Yeah,
90,000.
89.
Yeah.
Right.
Is
And
that with the personal property?
Yes.
yeah, so that's $90,000 a year to the town, and on property that currently generates zero. Is that correct?
Correct. Yep.
Okay.
And that
Mr. Chair-
includes the land lease. Is that correct?
Yeah.
The
I'm
land lease is
including
not
the
what
lease.
the town is taxing. The town will tax based on the assessor.
Right.
And this combination of the land lease, and that is an agreement with the CHDC. It doesn't have that much to do with the assessment and the taxing. So we're already beyond 75,000, and so I don't know what CHDC.
And here's,
Sorry, I got 59,000 for the property
Yeah,
tax.
I have 59,316.
It's 59,000. It's not 90. It's 59,000.
I thought it was 19. Oh, so you're right. It's 59. You're
It's
right.
59,000.
Yeah, it's 59.
when I went back and looked at the old one-stop statements that they gave us, it was back in 2015 or 16 or 17, they were showing annual tax revenue to the town of $40,000.
That's right.
Yeah, it's been modified
But
quite
yeah,
a bit.
look at that one stop, and I had a back and forth with John Hickling on this very question. They had a separate line in there for 35,000 that they anticipated paying in a ground lease to CHDC. And so the combination of those two numbers was $75,000. There's been a lot of machinations, like how much, they really just want to cap that number around 75,000. So all that's doing is squeezing CHDC in the end.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, there's a comment in the hand raised, if you can take a look.
Okay. Mr. Lawson, hold on. I will bring, let's bring Mike Lawson into the conversation.
Thank you, Dean. To my way of thinking, this was based on the Finance Committee vote, your previous vote, the Select Board vote, and comments we received from public. We went to Grantham and said, you really have just got to review your finances and do what you can to get this more favorable for the town. So they reduced the cap from 2.65 million to 2 million. And that resulted in a reduction from, I think it's 77, not 78, Lane, to 69.21%. And this will lead, it really depends on the actual valuation. Lane is correct. But this reduction in valuation will lead to an increase in the tax revenue that will be paid to the town. The exact amount we don't know, of course, until we get the actual valuation. And the second part of the change that was insisted upon was, first, there was an MOU between the town and Grantham indicating that Grantham would not ask for any additional financial aid whatsoever. A couple of members of the Select Board wanted this included in the TIF. And so I forwarded the TIF along with those comments to town council, and he was able to revise the TIF to include the language of the MOA in the actual agreement. So whether or not you view this as substantial or not, I think the two changes that are important is the taxes that will be paid to the town based on this TIF compared to the TIF you reviewed before will increase. And the town's position in terms of additional asks has been strengthened, where it is, it's not impossible for Grantham to ask, but it makes it virtually impossible for them to be successful in getting additional financial support. So thank you very much, Dean. I appreciate commenting.
Okay, I want to sort of stick with my previous remarks, which is that we've really heard most everything we expect to hear from citizen comment at this point. And I don't know how much that, if we have questions for the Select Board and that Mike could answer, or that we have questions for the Grantham group, I know that Mr. Ohanian is here, that he could answer. We can bring them in to answer questions, but I'm really not we're not soliciting citizen comment at this time. We are working through, as a finance committee, the details of these new clauses and these changes to this document. We've already made a motion and a vote on the previous iteration of this, and we're just trying to figure out whether we even want to reconsider what we have in front of us.
Dean, can I ask?
D.
For more discussion, should we have a motion to see if we want to reconsider this?
Yeah.
As we did in the previous
Yeah, that's fine. If we want to have a
discussion?
motion to reconsider.
I'll make a motion to reconsider this article, whatever it is, 16.
Can I get a second for that motion?
A second.
Okay, Wade. All right, I'm going to call the roll. I vote yea. Ms. Reynolds.
You're muted.
Yes.
Ms. Hartman.
I vote no, because I want to say why. The amount of the tax that we're going to get every year increased from 40 to 59,000. That's $19,000 a year over 15 years, roughly. It's not a lot of money. The cap went down.
Okay,
no, I vote no. Sorry.
It's okay. There you go.
I'm done.
Ms. Ortner.
Yes.
Mr. Tarpey.
Yes.
Mr. Packard.
Yes, to reconsider. Yep.
Yep. Ms. Zoll. You're muted.
You're muted.
You're muted. You're muted, Andrea.
Yes.
Mr. Rubenstein.
Yes.
Mr. Guariello.
Yes.
Mr. Patel.
Yes.
Mr. Taylor, you're muted.
Sorry, yes.
Mr. Jameson. Mr. Swain.
No.
Mr. Hicklin.
Yes.
Okay, we have 2 no's and the rest of us are yeses, so we will reconsider our action on the TIF.
Fair enough.
And that's where we are now. So,
Mr. Chair?
yes.
Sorry, I just wanted to make one clarification on the numbers.
Yep.
There is a base tax for the land that is not subject to the TIF. And when you add that in, the total amount that they would be paying would be $79,867.
Thank you.
Dean, can I ask Lane a couple questions just to make sure I understand how the situation has changed?
Yep.
So, Lane, we've gotten a lot of numbers thrown around, what's in and what's out from last meeting, et cetera. We've heard the $75,000 cap. I recognize the final number will be based on your valuation, right?
Correct.
However, have you done a valuation assuming a certain number? And can you tell us what the valuation is, what you're assuming, and then what the total bottom line income to the town would have been under the previous TIF and what it is for this TIF? Just the bottom line number.
So the valuation of the entire project is $14,982,082,
Okay.
and that includes a base value for the land of $1,444,000. That's what it will be worth. The part with the TIF that's hard is that they can only get the exemption on the improvement. So that's what kind of makes it difficult, because you're not talking about the total value of the property, you're talking about just the improvement.
I understand that, but you've done it. Do you have an assumption for what you think the improvement's going to be? And
Yes.
if so, what does that mean for revenue under the old TIF and the new TIF?
So the old TIF I don't have off the top of my head. The new TIF is going to be would be $192,649 for the improvement part.
Yep.
With an additional $20,550 for the land. And let me see, I think I have an old spreadsheet I can grab real quick for the former way.
So while you're doing that, the 192 and the 20,000 represent income to the town without the subsidy. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
And the old one was 178,419 for the improvement and 20,550 for the land.
Okay. And then what about now? What happens once you put the subsidy on? How much does the town get under the old one and the new one?
So under the old one, we would have gotten. Let me see. So we would have gotten 41 for the improvement plus the 20 for the land, and then another 14 for the personal property.
Okay, and then the new one?
And the new one, we're at 80,000 for all, for the land, the personal property, and the just under 80,000.
So we go roughly from 74,000 to 80,000. That's what I saw as the bottom line. Is that accurate?
I believe that's correct.
Thank you.
15 years.
For 15 years, correct.
Okay. So thank you for that. Dean, can I just make one statement? I voted for it in the previous one.
Yep.
The terms, even if they're marginal, in my opinion, have improved. So if we do want to reopen this, I would continue to vote in favor of being of affirmative action on the underlying warrant. Thank you.
Just a question.
Thanks, Wayne.
A question for Lane. So Lane, is the change in cap really material?
Originally, it wasn't. It was just a cap, and it wasn't tied to anything. Now it is. Now it actually does a reduction. That's why we went from 77% to 69.21, because the cap brought it down. That was assuming we were still going to do 15 years, which is, I think, instrumental to the project or to this type of financing. He's going to have a very hard time getting an investor to come in, because that investor's on the hook for 15 years by the rules of the income tax credits. They get it for 10 years, but then there's a 5-year clawback. So that investor can't get out of the project for 15 years. So the TIF needs to match that. So everything we did, I just kept using the 15 years.
So I do have a question, Lane, and that is, we're doing a lot of calculations based on year one of 15 years. Does a commercial property, increase in value over time the way a private home might? And would that mean that because valuation goes up, tax revenue to the town would also go up, because these things are done on a percentage basis?
Normally, if it was a market-driven project, I would agree with you, but you got to remember that what they can make on this project is limited by the restriction, which is tied to HUD median income. So if HUD median income doesn't go up, then the rent doesn't go up. If HUD median income goes down, the rent can actually go down. So the variable there is expenses, and expenses generally go up no matter what. So the question is, does the expenses go up at a greater rate than the HUD median income, or do they go up at the same rate? Or, so it's all tied to that. So the ones that I've looked into, generally expenses are climbing at a faster rate than the HUD median income. So therefore they kind of get out of balance as they go on, doesn't get better.
Thank you. Okay. So the capacity for the property value to increase steeply is very limited in this case.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Another question. So is it tied in perpetuity to HUD, or does it eventually expire?
No, it's tied. It is tied in perpetuity.
Perpetuity.
To get the demand for those credits are so high in Massachusetts, and that everyone that I've looked into, they have to, even though it doesn't require in perpetuity, they are agreeing to in perpetuity just to get the money. So it will stay affordable for as long as it's there.
And in this case, the property itself is constrained by the grant from the state, that it must be affordable. So it can't be unmoored because of the land grant from the Bureau of Prisons or Corrections.
Correct.
So we're not really under a motion now. We have voted to reconsider, but I don't believe we have a motion on the table at the moment. I don't believe. So what would I see, Carl, you have your hand in the air. What would you like to do?
I would move that we vote to take affirmative action on the Article 16 for the tax increment financing agreement.
Second.
Okay, so we now are under a motion, and we are having discussion. So
I'd like to say that basically what I brought up when we first started discussing this, I don't see that there had been really that this really brings a material change to the agreement that was approved in 2017. I mean, as has happened before with this project and with the way it's presented, it gets presented in a way that kind of throws people off. But fundamentally,
it's the exact same that the thing that the town has approved previously and that the finance committee approved previously.
So,
Mary?
I disagree respectfully, Carl. I don't think that when the town voted to approve the $2 million in free cash and CPC funds, that they were explicitly aware of the fact that there was going to be another $2 million ask down the road. We just have different memories of that. I mean, I was there and I was paying attention. That's not what I remember as being aware of that. Maybe some people
were aware. It's right there in the pro forma that the taxes were going to be reduced.
But I think the people that were people at town meeting weren't told that explicitly. That might have been on might have been on a piece of paper. It might have been a group of people, but I know that I was a taxpayer. I was at town meeting, and I wasn't aware that there was going to be another $2 million ask down the road. In fact, I was at the
not another $2 million ask.
Can I finish? Well, it is actually, because if somebody gave me an exemption for property taxes on my home that was going to save me $2 million for the next 15 years, I would consider it money in the bank. So I was there. I was at the finance committee meeting when this was discussed as far as, is this the last time the town is going to be asked for money, when we were talking about the free cash. And in fact, the impression there was, yes, that was the last time. And the MOA said that they were not going to come again. So that's my memory. So we disagree on the memory.
I think that it's been presented poorly once again.
We disagree on the memory. So
project from beginning.
So yeah. Let me say my words now. I listened to the select board meeting the other night, and I understand that the select board agreed to affirmative action. And I think that they were thoughtful and sincere people, and I respect that. And this is a complicated deal. And I see it's a complicated deal. But when you have complicated deals, I think it's incumbent upon us to make sure that what can be clear is made clear. And I think it's incumbent upon us to make sure that people aren't given unpleasant surprises 3 years down the road. So I'm going to maintain my no action vote, not because of the project necessarily, but because of the process. I think the process could have been better. And that's what troubles me about this. So I'm gonna maintain my no vote because of the process.
Mary?
Yeah.
Well, and Carl, I was there a while ago too, and I have to side with Carl on this. I don't see a substantial difference between what was presented back then and what's been presented now. The land currently generates no revenue. So to say that we're giving them $2 million, you have to kind of twist into pretzels to do that, because the land generates nothing now.
But there will be a demand on services. There will be a demand on services from this particular project.
And if you, here's my other thought, is if you're talking about housing per person, about $36,000 per subsidized housing per person.
If it's right. $4 million divided by 83,
I thought we put in $3 million.
Well, we put in 2, and now we're going to put in another 2, or we're forgiving 2. So we
no. I'm talking about the cash cost. Cash
is 2.
That's right. It's 2.
2 million. Oh, so it's even lower. So 2 million divided by 83.
Yep.
It's 24,000 per person. What is our cost to do this, going around and buying one house at a time?
Oh, we can't afford it.
Yeah.
We can't afford to do that. You buy down a property, meaning you make it in perpetuity, you're going to make it affordable. But even in buying down, you're going to be spending $250,000, $300,000 for a $600,000 or $800,000 house that needs to be renovated.
We did do the Peter Bulkley building, though, and that was
Peter Bulkley building. Now there is money in the CPC. The CPC had put money in years ago because they knew that there'd be a property coming up in the Peter Bulkley, and they had actually earmarked like $250,000.
Yeah.
So just for that one property.
My only point is that Peter Bulkley was
to have an orderly process here. I just cannot have.
Yeah. Sorry, Dean. Back to you.
Okay, thanks. Okay, so Tom.
First of all, I was at, I think, all the meetings that Mary and Carl referred to, and I agree with both of them that the property tax supposition of $40,000 per year was clearly in the pro forma. However, no one on the select board or at Grantham or in the finance committee made the leap to say, well, this represents a subsidy, an additional subsidy of $2.65 million over what this property would bear in property tax if it is developed in an alternative way. And I think it is disingenuous to say that it doesn't represent a cash subsidy because there's no income from it now. I think we have to recognize that there will be something on that property. It will not remain deserted forever. And whether it is this particular project or whether it's 80 units of family affordable housing, it remains to be seen. But the fact is that what they will be receiving from the town is a total subsidy of $4 million. The $2 million from in cash and the $2 million in a tax incentive financing reduction in the property tax that they would have paid otherwise. I think that this is overall not a good deal, and I maintain my no vote on this.
Andrea.
Just a comment. I may be wrong, but it's my understanding about that we're talking about 83 units of assisted living. That's the project, correct?
Yes.
Dee mentioned by refurbishing homes and the cost of that. We're talking apples and oranges. We're talking assisted living facilities versus families housing.
Yes.
They're two separate things. This is not going to bring families to Concord for subsidized housing. This particular project. It is a project for assisted living. Correct?
Andrea's trying to bring up is that the cost to the town in services is way less than for family housing.
Well, it depends on your priorities. If you want to bring diversity to the town and bring families.
Yes.
Yeah, that's, there are different costs that go into assisted living. But yes, there are always costs. But this is not going to bring young families into town.
Right.
And
it does allow seniors to stay in town that otherwise won't be able to.
Well, I'm a senior too, and
I understand.
Who knows what my position is going to be. But we're talking about this project and comparing it to homes that are being refurbished for families. And there is no comparison. They're two different things. So if you want more families to move to town, this is not the right project.
I'd like to try to narrow the conversation if possible. These kinds of broad things have been part of the conversation the whole time. We have a very narrow set of changes that have occurred from the last time we took a vote. I think we all have a pretty good idea of how we voted before and why we voted that way. And the changes may nudge you in a different direction, or they may not. I don't know. But can we talk about the document that's before us and the changes that have been made to it? I think Parashar got to that by asking a very specific question: how much of a change in overall benefit to the town does this bring us? And we got a number that's somewhere in the vicinity of $20,000 a year or something, $15,000 a year. So that's the kind of question that the changes that are in front of us are really addressing. And all of this, whether we're having family housing or we're relitigating something that has been litigated through 2 public hearings and a separate meeting with Grantham. And I really feel like if we can keep it to the topic at hand, I would appreciate it.
So Dean, let me just comment on that. Thank you. The other change, in my opinion, again, I voted in favor of it the last time. Right. If we choose to open it up, I think the marginal increase in revenue is good for the town. I agree it's not huge. The other change of adding in this paragraph about not seeking additional input, frankly, is worth the paper it's printed on, in my opinion. I'm not saying that people in the future will ask out of bad faith. Circumstances change, things happen, whether it's Grantham or whoever else may come back and ask the town for more money. So I'm not putting my stock in that paragraph, because the town, if it comes to that in the future, can make a decision in the future as to what it wants to do. So I would, again, vote to support it because of all the reasons folks that are in support of it have cited in the past. I'm not going to say that. The marginal benefit is, I'll say it one last time, is marginally better for the town, and therefore I would vote to support it again if we vote again.
Clarification, are we just voting on the revised Article 16, or are we also voting on this amendment that has been forwarded to us? That is separate. That is not included in this.
And we will have Tanya come and present her amendment.
I just wanted to make, I wanted to be clear on that.
Yep. Anyone else like to speak to the, Phil?
Yes. So first of all, Parashar, I respectfully believe we did not vote for it before. The last vote was close, but a 6-5 against this.
No, he's saying he voted for it before, I believe.
He said, but anyways, I'm against it because these changes make me more concerned about the project. If you remember, when this was presented to us 2 weeks ago or whenever it was, it had to be 2.6 million or the project finances would not work. They could not get an investor. And that is similar to what we were told 3 years ago when we were first told it had to be 3 million upfront in order for the finances to work. And when that became an issue, they came back and said 2 million would work. And so now we're hearing we don't need 2.6 million, we just need 2 million. But that makes me more suspicious. As Mary pointed out, 3 years ago, they agreed flat out. The developer agrees not to request any financial support from the town other than these town funds. And here we are again. And I know they're promising to do it even further, not direct or indirect financial support. But I read that 3 years ago, and I think a lot of people did who were at the town meeting and voted for the $2 million based on the promise they would not seek additional financial support. And it wasn't qualified that it's only direct financial support. Now it's direct or indirect. But those words are they could still come around and say, well, we're not asking for some financial support, it's monetary support or something. And the final thing is that this is $4 million to a for-profit developer in a year before we're about to take on the task of a new middle school. So I just don't think we should be supporting this kind of thing. We've given them $2 million. That if they can make it work with that, great. But we shouldn't be adding to our debt any further with this.
Okay, Dee.
I have a question. I think this question would be directed to Lane. In a handout that the Concord Housing Foundation sent us, they said that in the letter it said that if this blew up, if our work with Grantham blew up, and say a nonprofit came in to develop the property, they said that they wouldn't have to pay taxes. Is that correct? Because they're a nonprofit?
Not necessarily. The Chapter 59 is pretty specific of who is exempt from taxes, and it goes to their letters of incorporation, and there's quite a process I go through to determine whether they are exempt under real estate tax law of the Commonwealth. So 5013C doesn't automatically become exempt from real estate taxes in the Commonwealth. There's a lot more. So it depends on who it was and what they were doing. And
but there is a possibility that a nonprofit could come in and they could be granted tax-free.
I guess it's possible.
Is that possible?
It's possible, I guess, but I don't know of any nonprofits that own apartment buildings.
Okay.
And, you know, would do it. And you know, most of these, in this case, because it's assisted living, they're maintaining ownership. But in most of these cases, there are apartment buildings, but I don't know of any for nonprofit. Maybe some church development might be that way. But
like a Habitat for Humanity?
Yes, but Habitat always sells it. They very rarely keep a property.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Tom.
Dean, to buttress the point that Phil was making about reservations about the project, from the earliest point when Grantham came to visit the Finance Committee, as we pointed out that we would become the largest equity investor in this project, and we asked that Grantham make available to us the offering memoranda that would be shown to other investors. And I'm sorry to say, my recollection is that Grantham steadfastly failed to do that. I don't know, I can't recall quite whether they said there weren't such documents, which I think is unlikely, but they have never provided those documents, which would let us know whether the statements they've repeatedly made from the beginning to the end, that if they did not have thus and such degree of capital subsidy from the town, the project just wouldn't go forward.
I recall you making those requests, Tom. My recollection is foggy, but I also somewhat recall that they indicated that those were sort of private offerings. They were private documents, and they weren't forthcoming about handing them over. So, Chris.
This is a question for Lane. So, have you worked on, I know Concord hasn't done a TIF before, but as an assessor, I imagine you maybe talked to other assessors. So when you got the request in connection with this TIF, in figuring out the math and how much of reduction Concord would be giving, do you have any perspective in terms of whether that is a fair reduction, if I can use those words or not?
I haven't done enough analysis on other projects to be able to give you an answer on that. I can tell you that all the tax credit projects that I have reviewed, and I've reviewed a lot of them. I was on a committee with the Department of Revenue and several assessors and several tax reps to review this issue, and we came out with some memoranda that the Department of Revenue published and stuff. So I was very heavily involved in it, and we reviewed numerous projects, and they all have quite a bit of subsidy to work. They just, because they're tied to that HUD median income, they just don't work if there isn't a lot of public money involved.
Thank you.
I have a quick question for Lane. Lane, based on your knowledge of the markets, if this project were voted down by the town, what would the likely alternative use for that land be, and how long would it take for another project to go in there?
Well, I do know that the gift had a restriction that it had to be 100% affordable. Most projects have a market element to them, but we're restricted from the gift it has to be 100% affordable. I would think that if you were going to do a project in there again, and you were looking for an investor, if they were going after the income tax credits to help fund it, I don't know, what was it, 6 years, I think, when they started that? So I think it's conceivable it would be another 6 years.
I have one comment about the TIF itself. It's just a comment, and it just kind of rankles me a little. In paragraph 3 of the company's obligations, it indicates that the company will invest $19,998,000. That's actually somewhat, I mean, they will take money and build a building, but the town of Concord will invest $2 million. The state of Massachusetts is handing over $7.5 million of tax credits, which will be capitalized to come out at about $6.3 million. So between those two, that's $8.3 million. Grantham Group will invest about, I don't know, $12 million maybe. It's $11 million, not 8. And that number just rankles me because Concord's investing money in this and the state is investing money in this. And to assert that Grantham is investing this much money is just not true. So that's just my 2 cents.
That's developers. That's the way they work.
Other people's money, right, Carl?
They don't really invest very much of their own, funds in it. They invest the seed money. They spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on bringing it to the stage of where the investors take over with their tax investments.
Can I call for a motion? Because again, it seems like we're relitigating.
Yeah, we are
arguments, and let's just vote on this and move on.
Good idea.
I think that's a fine thing to ask for. So shall we bring it to a vote? I will call the roll. I'm Dean Banfield, and I vote no.
Are we voting for are we voting to reopen?
Whether or not
voting for?
Okay,
we're voting. You made the motion.
It's to move affirmative action on the revised TIF, on affirmative action supporting Article 16, and fundamentally Article 16 refers to this TIF, to this new TIF. So we're voting for affirmative action under Article 16. It refers to this new TIF. And
I make a motion.
Yeah, that we've been discussing this under that motion.
We already had,
we had the motion. Yeah,
it's fine.
And a second.
No,
Okay.
I've already weighed in. I vote no. Ms. Reynolds.
yes.
Ms. Hartman.
No.
Ms. Ortner.
Yes.
Mr. Tarpey.
No.
Mr. Packard.
Yes.
Ms. Zoll.
No.
Mr. Rubenstein.
Yes.
Mr. Guariello.
Yes.
Mr. Patel.
Yes.
Mr. Taylor.
Yes.
Mr. Jameson.
Yes.
Mr. Swain. You're muted.
No.
Mr. Hickling.
Yes.
Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 no. 1, 2, 3, 4.
It passes.
9 yes, it passes. So we are now in support recommending affirmative action under Article 16 with the revised TIF.
I
Okay.
agree with Mary about the process. It's been terrible, but yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. The next article on our agenda, now that we have agreed to support the existing TIF, is offered by Ms. Galis, who would like us to discuss her amendment to the TIF in an effort to improve it in her view. So can we bring Tanya Galis in and have her introduce herself? Is she here? I don't see. There she is. Yes.
Unmute.
You're unmuted. Very good.
Video. Hello.
There you are. Can you just introduce yourself in the formal manner, please?
Yes.
Wrap up now. Brush your teeth.
What? My business suit. Tanya Galis, 62 Prescott Road. My amendment is for two purposes, as I summarized, I think, in my note to you. The first purpose is to change the language from the company agrees to the company shall not be entitled to, in order to fit the language of the section that it was placed in. I could also have looked into putting it under Section B, company's obligations, but I didn't want to mess with that. I thought this would be simpler.
Okay.
The second issue is that as I think most of you would agree, one of the problems with this whole process has been really, bottom line, trying to figure out, among other things, whether Grantham really means it when they say they won't carry out the project if they don't get this money. I mean, there are not obviously enough documents to show that that's likely. There are indications to me that I needn't get into right now. I might later, but you know, that indicate to me that they're not likely to withdraw, even if Article 16 doesn't pass. I don't think it's in their interest to do so. But it has been really painful for the town to say, wait a minute, they said this on the MOA, what is this about now? And I think it is pretty clear that it is another financial ask, because at least more people agree to that now. Therefore, to me, what is important, however, it's also clear to me now that whatever document they have signed under this contract, they are really free to come and ask for more, that they can't be really prevented from doing that, at least not under the terms of this contract. So I want to protect the town against more asks that twist our arm, really is how I feel it. Therefore, I want to provide a disincentive there that when they ask, accompanied with statements that otherwise we won't do this project and you will have to face, the affordable housing quota issues, you really need this, 30 jobs or whatever it is they are offering, that we will be in a position to say the select board will be urged to start the certification process, which is actually, which is spelled out in item 8. So the process is in item 8. I'm not saying item 8 has to be activated because, but the process in item 8 has to be activated. And that provides ample opportunity for renegotiation. But at least there will be a disincentive there for these kinds of terms when they make another ask. So that even if they make another ask, the entire process will be more of a fair negotiation instead of the town having to tear itself apart, really, about whether they do or don't mean what they're saying. So that's my point.
So for us to take this up, I'm not exactly sure what our process is, because it's not actually before the town yet. So fundamentally, the way it would work within the context of town meeting would be that the main motion would be on the floor. We would have already given our opinion that we recommend affirmative action on the main motion, and now Tanya's amendment would be up for discussion, and then would be moved, obviously, and be up for discussion. So maybe we can operate now in the spirit that this was now up for the motion has been moved and Tanya has moved her amendment, and her amendment is now being deliberated by the town meeting. We would need to go off and deliberate on our own. How would we come to a conclusion of that? I think is where we have to be now. We want to sort of be ahead of that so that when she moves it, we're ready. We don't have to go off and go through this process. I think that's what we need to do now. Dee.
I want to use the League of Women Voter format. I just want to relay this. We had this same thing the other day at a meeting with an amendment that was going to be raised. And what we did do is that if the amendment comes up, as this has now, and Tanya has presented her information, that if there is a question that someone wants to ask her about the amendment, that is one thing. But once we start to deliberate, Tanya could not be present at the deliberation.
I am not.
That, and I'm just saying that this was a format that we used at the League, that's how it was going to handle a different amendment, which never took place.
So
yeah,
so I think Dee has a point, and that is that in the context of the true town meeting, we would, as a body, not taking other input, just deliberate. I'm not sure. I mean, Tanya can observe because we're in a town meeting. You're in an open environment and you can be observed. So she can observe, but I think that the back and forth you're suggesting, Dee, would need to shut down, and it would just be us having a conversation. So,
okay.
That I think that's what you're implying, Dee. And this is why I said, well, we're in a kind of a new area for me, and I'm just trying to make our way through it successfully. But I think it's important for us to be out ahead of it and have this deliberation rather than try to do it on the floor of town meeting, because there's no floor. It's a grass.
It's not floor.
I think we have, we understand the fundamentals. You've really pared this down, Tanya, from some of your earlier iterations. It's a much more concise process where you just refer out to Section 8, where the decertification appeal would go off to the EACC. And reading Section 8, it's quite clear that we have the right to do that, to revoke it, if they do not meet any of the particular obligations as set forth in the agreement. One of the obligations is that they will not ask for more money. So as long as that's violated, we have the right to appeal to the decertification of the TIF. So I think you've got a nice tight approach here, and I'm glad that the moderator and the town council are able to consult with you. So,
how do we mechanically, should we move to take a position on this evening and then, vote on that and then move to whatever position we're going to take? I'm trying to help.
I do think that we could have a motion straight up. That's just, I don't think we need a two-step process. The only reason we did that two-step process before is because we had already deliberated and then resolved something. So we need to reconsider it. So are we going to reconsider it? Yes, we are. Okay, now we need a motion under the reconsideration. Here we're just straight up. We could just have a motion straight up if we want.
I'll move to, I guess would be vote no action on this amendment.
Okay, we have a second for that?
Recommend no action.
Yep.
Second.
Parshar? Second. We have a second. Okay. So we're currently deliberating under a motion of no action under this. Any comment or discussion on this? Parshar?
And Phil, maybe you can answer this question, but it seemed, my statement in the previous discussion was that paragraph that got added, this paragraph that we're now seeking to amend, I think, isn't worth the paper it's written on, because if both parties want to reopen this in the future, they could. Is that fair even for this paragraph?
Yes, I'd say it would be, but there is, it's a question of reliance. So this paragraph is in there. The town meeting is voting on it, and so at least some people are relying on it, just like they relied on it 3 years ago. So I think, although the parties, if they want to, can decide not to do it, I think it improves things. And I support Tanya's motion because I think it improves that portion of the agreement.
Well, nothing will bind a future select board or a future town meeting from changing it, right?
Yeah, and okay. As we've observed, it won't bar Grantham from not observing it.
Yeah, fair enough. Thank you.
So the piece of it that to me weakens it is that the select board will be urged. It does not say that select board shall. Like if somebody comes and asks for more, if they come and ask for more money, then the implication of that second sentence is that we're trying to just shut down further benefits under the TIF. We're going to shut it down. We're going to apply to decertify it. It's going to go away because you're asking for other financial support. So this financial support will come to a conclusion, and whatever your ask is going to have to include whatever you need that you were expecting from this. So urged is it's just very muddy. Shall would be nice, but it's not the way that Tanya has presented the amendment. Greg, you're muted.
Yeah. Can I ask you a question here of why, as a FinCom, we're discussing language that to me doesn't seem to be financially, there's no finances sort of behind this. I mean, you could go with what you just said, that, it will bring back the TIF or something like that. But this sounds like all law language in a contract that the Finance Committee, is not, that's not our job, right? Just a question there.
Yeah, I think it is an interesting question, but I think that the larger scope of this is in support of the financial benefit that this TIF is providing. So I think the Finance Committee can consider it in a more global way, Greg. But I understand your point, which is that we're getting into the whereases and the wherefores of legal language, but we're being asked to weigh in. So I think this is still within the scope of what we should be doing. Chris.
I'm comfortable with the changes that the select board made with town council to the document. So I'm not going to say yes on the proposed changes. I'm comfortable with it as it is, and I don't think it needs further tinkering.
Anyone else like to comment on we are under a motion at the moment of recommending no action. Any more comments on this motion? Mary?
I'd just like to be clear on what this is saying. And it's saying that if Grantham were to come to the town to ask for either direct or indirect, we have a remedy that we might use, which is to decertify the TIF. Am I understanding this correctly?
Well, we're not in if we're trying to observe the rule that the league used for their thing, Tanya's kind of out of the picture.
Yeah. And you're a public body, and if this was town meeting, you would be asking me questions. This is about, there are already issues about.
No, Tanya.
All right.
This is a prelude to town meeting. We're trying to do something really rare here that's not going to happen again for another 50 years. So we're doing our best.
I will just ask that you read it carefully, please. I worked very hard on the wording.
Yeah.
The town moderator is here, so I just ask you to read everything carefully, please.
So just to simulate town meeting, I do think that in the deliberation aspect of town meeting, generally speaking, the town gets to ask you questions, Tanya. But I think as a deliberative body, we would sort of go off to the side and have to just do it in a vacuum and come back and make a recommendation and then let the rest of the town deliberate. It's sad, but I just kind of, in this simulation mode that we're in, I think you're unfortunately kind of cut out of the picture.
That's fine. I just want to clarify that I'm not trying to sell my amendment further.
Oh, you should sell it. You should.
Well, I already did that, and I'm not trying to intervene in that matter. I am only trying to correct any misunderstandings. So I will shut up. So yeah.
So can she answer my question?
Let's let her answer the question. I just can't. It's too.
Tanya, do you want me to repeat my question? Or
thank you. Yes, please, Mary.
My question was the substantive change this is making to the TIF agreement is that if the developer were to come and ask for either direct or indirect financial support, the town has a remedy that they may use, which is to decertify the existing TIF. Is that correct?
Well, I added a specification so that it is kinder than what you're saying.
Okay.
I said it only if they accompany that with a claim that otherwise we're not doing. So my issue, it's already clear that they have asked based on 3 years ago. It's already clear that this new TIF agreement is making it clear that they can ask again just by they put in this sentence, further, the total exemption shall not be increased without approval of both the select board and town meeting. That implies that they can ask if they want to.
Okay.
So my statement is, if they come back, except that in the MOA they have agreed not to. So as Dean said, Section 8 may or may not be activated. That's not my point. My point is that if they come and say, we would like to ask for this kind of financial support, and if we don't get it, sorry, we can't operate the project anymore. Sorry, we can't do the project anymore. When they say that kind of take it or leave it, then the select board can start the same decertification process that is underlined,
do it anyway.
Outlined. Thank you. Thank you very much for giving me a chance to clarify.
Okay, no problem. Okay, we're doing our best here to try to thread this needle.
Clearly, please.
So Dean, can I just, I'm with Greg a little bit on this one. It seems to me that we're talking about negotiating language in the underlying TIF. It also appears that no matter what we do today or what town meeting does on Sunday with this amendment, in the future, if the select board and town meeting and Rantham or whoever else are operating the facility wants to give them more money, nothing's going to stop them, frankly. And so it feels like we're wasting our time sort of arguing on paragraph, which really, frankly, carries no teeth if in the future everybody changes their mind. So I would call for a vote on Carl's original motion, and we move on.
So the motion at the moment is for no action on the amendment. That's what we're just deliberating under. We can take a vote on that, and that will be that. I think that's where we are. I don't, unless anyone wants to amend the motion or otherwise ask us to table it or somehow.
If I were to amend the motion, I would actually amend it to vote against this amendment, but it's not even an amendment.
What did you propose? No action is a no.
I would recommend no action on this amendment.
Is that a no vote? Is that a no? Okay.
Well, we are making a recommendation. We make a recommendation.
Right.
And so,
but a no action is a no.
Individually can vote whatever we want.
Right.
No action.
What the recommendation will be.
So I think we should bring it to a vote. We have two options here. If you vote yes, you are voting basically to not include this text as an amendment into the TIF. You are voting no on this. It means that it means nothing, really. It just means
you want to deliberate further.
Yeah, we're going to have to deliberate further. So a yes vote here means that we're recommending not adding this text into the TIF. Okay, that's a yes vote. So it's sort of upside down. I vote yes. And Chris?
Yes.
Mary?
Abstain.
Abstain, okay. Dee?
Yes.
Tom? Muted.
Can't hear you.
You're muted.
Abstain.
Abstain. Carl?
Yes.
Andrea?
Yes.
Wade?
Yes.
Greg?
Abstain.
Parshar?
Yes.
Dick?
Yes.
Phil?
No.
And Brian?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
A majority of those voting carry the day. It does not. Our recommendation is no action on your amendment. So I think we're pretty much done here with this item on our
Good thinking.
Okay. Thank you, Tanya.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you for considering.
Yep. That is all we have for this evening. We've done good work. It's been a pleasure serving as your chair, and I will see you on the Doug White Fields. I don't know what we have in mind for an arrangement so that we could ever collect if we do end up having to caucus. We'll need to sort that out. Chris?
Weren't we going to do some sort of group texting?
That is, we could try to arrange that. I'm happy to,
Just in case, I guess.
Yeah, we could, we could set, I'll try to set that up. That's a good idea. We should set that up. Tom?
Can we just do a conference call?
What's that?
Sorry.
What is the rain date?
Monday.
Monday.
At 5.
At 5.
Monday at 5?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Do we need to be there a little bit early on Sunday, or is 1 o'clock? Is it 1 o'clock sharp, or what? Dean?
No,
1 o'clock is fine. The select board will be meeting ahead of the town meeting. They will take up our action under Article 11 so that they can take a formal vote to increase their motion to meet what we've recommended. So there is a meeting of the select board. We don't have any further business ahead of the meeting. So we don't have a posted meeting right now ahead of the meeting.
So 1 o'clock.
Just 1 o'clock is fine. Yep.
How do we know if it's raining too hard?
Well, that is a call of the moderator, and I'm not sure. Maybe if Carmen is still here, she might be willing to step in and answer that question.
Everybody's going the other direction.
He's there. Oops, he was there.
Hi, folks. I'm here. So in answer to your question, we will be making the decision Friday night, probably around 7 or 8 p.m. on whether the meeting is going forward on Sunday. Right now, it's looking like fog with my husband is shaking his head. Oh, partly sunny. So this morning it was looking like fog with a chance of drizzle late in the day, but the forecast has actually been steadily improving over the last 48 hours. So it's really looking, partly sunny. Okay. It's really looking like a go right now. And in terms of what time you should get there, it's a long, I don't know if anybody's done it, but it's a long walk from the lower parking lot up to the Doug White Field, or from the Beatty Center, or from the driveway out to Thoreau Street. So you want to make sure you leave yourself plenty of time to park your car and walk up. And everybody should remember that it's going to be a 6-foot spaced queue with lots of social distancing and care to check in this year. So I got to believe it's going to be just the tiniest bit slower than it usually is. So it would be great if the Finance Committee is there when the meeting actually starts. You know, if it happens that we have 200 people in line at the moment that we're supposed to be starting the meeting, we will wait. But I'd really like not to have to do that. And then in terms of setting you guys up for a text, one problem is a profound lack of cell service up there. There will be a Comcast van with a hotspot for Wi-Fi service. And it looks like that's going to work pretty well. But I think you'd really have to do Zoom for the public meeting, the open meeting law aspect of this. I don't think you can have a text communication for anything the Finance Committee would have to do unless it's open to the public. I'm happy to talk to the town clerk about that, but I think that's a serious impediment.
What's the reason we can't stand 6 feet apart from each other and talk to each other?
There is no reason. And so, so if Dean waves his voting slip at me and says, can you make an announcement that the Finance Committee needs to assemble, I'll do that. And then you guys just all get up, walk to the side, and stand 6 feet apart with your masks on. That's certainly what the select board is going to be be Yeah. And
you can perch us up on the hill back there, and we can all.
Yeah. Well, our plan is to block off a section of seating up front for the Finance Committee, the Select Board, Planning Board, and the School Committee. So you guys should all be able to sit together, so that you should be able to wave at each other. And you should be up front and close enough that you can easily take yourselves off to a separate location to chat. And our plan is we're only using the first field. We do have the second field up there for overflow if we need it. I really don't think we're going to need it. And that means it's just going to be open. So you're going to be able to just walk over there and have a chat if you would like to do that. There also should be plenty of room at the back, and if need be, you can walk out to the parking lot. You know, there's all kinds of places where there'll be space to chat.
Dean, may I speak? I can't see you raising my hand option here for me. Town meeting is actually exempt from the open meeting law.
Oh, thank you.
For this reason, and
I already consulted with Carrie about that. I'm not declaring a meeting, but the select board is having an actual business meeting before town meeting starts, so they can take action.
But if the FinCom were to caucus during the meeting, you wouldn't have to do it on Zoom. You're not subject to the open meeting law. You just have to be visible. Don't go hiding in the corner somewhere.
Right.
But
so. You know, I guess I forgot about that, Anita, but I will say that I think that people would find it upsetting if you were communicating with each other on a text line that they couldn't see, even though you always sit together at your table and no one can hear what you're saying at the front of the auditorium. But I think people would find it upsetting. Just my point of view.
We're saying, can you pass the snacks, please?
Exactly.
That's most of what we're saying.
Right.
Thank you, Carmen. We did have 2 people with their hands up, but I believe Dee. I was talking about people in the crowd, but anyway, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
I just had a question for Carmen. Have you had any other amendments come up?
Just these 2 so far. There had been a different amendment to Article 16, which was withdrawn when the TIF was changed. But those are the only 2 of which I am aware. There are a few nits that were discovered in some of the motions after they went to press. So those won't come as amendments. They're going to come as everybody look the fourth line down on page 38 and you see that word there, it's actually this different word. So there'll be a few of those, but not too many.
Okay.
Thank you, Carmen. Okay, so we have a few citizen comments, and I don't want to close out the meeting without giving them an opportunity to weigh in. So we have someone who's had their hand up the whole time, whose name appears to be Ingrid. And if we could bring Ingrid to the virtual table to introduce herself and offer her comment. Oops. There and then not there.
Dean, I think she dropped.
When you're moved from one state to the other, it looks like you're being dropped. So maybe she, I don't know. I think Mike Lawson would like to say something. He has his hand up. So we can try. And if Ingrid comes back in, we can get back to her. You're muted, Mike.
Well, you just missed my compliment then. On behalf of the select board, to simply thank Dean for his service as chair of the committee this year. It's been a tough year, and your steady leadership has been greatly appreciated. Also want to thank Tom and Carl for their many years of service on the finance committee. I know you'll both be departing this year, so thank you both for both your leadership and your participation over these years. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you.
Night.
Yay.
So I see that Tanya would like to, or maybe Mark would like to get back in and make a comment.
They're muted. There we go.
I forgot what. Oh yes. There is one thing. There is one thing I wanted to. I realized one thing, which is that your votes on the amendments would be based either on a booklet statement or on a town meeting presentation. And what I said to you this morning was very short. It was not my three-minute presentation. It did not. So I'm wondering if you might leave it open to reconsider your vote after my presentation at town meeting, because that really is the way it would be done after either a formal presentation, or in this year if things are in the booklet in time, and mine could not be in the booklet in time, even if I, because it was. Even the select board's last TIF was pre-sent and then approved afterwards with the printer. So I'm wondering if you would reconsider after my presentation. And as far as that language, I think the town moderator typed in something. I'm not allowed to say the select board shall do this or that for a future select board. That is why urge is the required language. Just wanted to clarify that too.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, I see no other comments at the moment. So I am looking for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
A second?
Second.
Second.
Call the roll. Mr. Banfield, I vote yes. Ms. Reynolds?
Yes.
Ms. Hartman?
Yes.
Ms. Ortner?
Yes.
Mr. Tarkin?
Very reluctantly, yes.
It's been so much fun.
Ms. Zoll?
Yes.
Rubenstein?
Yes.
Mr. Guariello?
Yes.
Patel?
Yes.
Mr. Jameson?
Yes.
Mr. Swain?
Yes.
Mr. Taylor?
Yes.
Mr. Hickling?
Yes, please.
Okay, thank you all. We'll see you at town meeting.
Thank you, Dean.
Thank you, Dean.
Good night. Thank you, Dean.
Bye-bye.